Hi everyone, today let's talk about the Speaker of the House stuff just a little bit more here. Then we'll get into the economic data, then we'll get into the charts, as well as my results for the day and my thoughts going into tomorrow's session. If you like trading stocks and options and making money, definitely like and subscribe. I make videos like this every single day that the markets are open as well as Sundays, so make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Welcome to the Portfolio Bulletin. Let's get started. So the Speaker of the House is up for grabs, and now we have Jim Jordan and Steve Scalise vying for this position. A couple of people voted for Trump, which is pretty interesting. That would absolutely be wild if he were to get elected to the speakership. I don't know the last time we had a speaker who was not part of the House of Representatives, but I'm sure it's been a very long time. They say here, 2 members of the House said they voted for Donald Trump, and that was the only person that they were currently supporting. You also have Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan, also potentially front-running here. It does seem like Steve Scalise might have the upper hand here, however. We have multiple members coming out and saying they think very highly of him and that they would potentially vote for him. And you have the majority whip also saying he would be a great speaker. Of course, they have to reach 218 votes, which will be pretty challenging for anybody. And then they mention the Donald Trump piece one more time, saying that he could get a little bit of support. And Marjorie Taylor Greene is saying that he is the only one that they would support. And then Donald Trump, being the troll that he is, posted an image of him holding the gavel in the speaker's chambers, which again would be absolutely wild. From an economic perspective, we want anybody who is relatively moderate to be elected and then get this over with fairly quickly so the markets can have at least a little bit of certainty. The current uncertainty, in my opinion, is going to weigh on markets, and the longer this draws out, the heavier it'll weigh. Moving over to the economic calendar, you can see here the ADP non-farms came in much lower than expectations, and that's part of what drove up markets here today. Global composite PMI, slightly better. Services PMI, basically on the money. Factory orders, a little bit better than expectations and much better than the previous read. And non-manufacturing PMI right on the money. Moving over to tomorrow, not much on here. We do have initial jobless claims like every Thursday. Fed balance sheet, that's also been fairly interesting here recently. But don't forget, for the Friday session, we have lots of big data. Non-farm payrolls, unemployment rate at 8:30. And those are obviously going to have a massive impact on the markets. We've already seen the JOLTS report and ADP non-farms throwing the markets around, and this is going to be no exception in my opinion. Moving over to Max Payne, you can see it's now at 427, continues to tick down here just about every day. Options right around 1 million, put call ratio at 2. 420 continues to be a very strong put wall in my opinion. 425 also fairly interesting. Right now we're in this gap here between 420 and 425. Is that where we're going to stay for the end of the week, or will we push towards that Max Payne level up around 427? Seems like either one is possible at this point, especially with the rally that we had today. Moving over to the charts on the hour and the daily, you can see we rallied up just about all day. Couldn't get above the 55 on the hourly chart. Currently sitting at 424.78. Touched that level just for a moment, pulled back a little bit after hours. But this rally here today was a little bit nice. You can see we had a pretty solid bottom in, rallied into that mid-session, and finished fairly cleanly. Looking at the daily chart, you can see we almost got back all the gains from the previous day. Not quite there, up 0.81%. Zooming out here on the daily chart to give you that context, you can see we had been trending up for a long time. This is clearly a short-term downtrend. The question is this 200 SMA going to hold? It's right on the line with this trend line. It does seem like we're going to get to that level, but momentum continuing to tick a little bit higher. We had that one step down on Tuesday, but here today we're back ticking towards bullish. RSI hit oversold conditions a few times. If we rally up to trend, that would put us at 43.50. You also have the 21 and VWAP sitting at 43.78, which would be a nice little rally from current levels. I don't know necessarily if the short-term trend is going to reverse, but if we get a pullback up to those resistance levels, that could be pretty good, at least in the short term. Moving over to the NASDAQ, similar thesis. Fell yesterday, hit trend, and hit this horizontal support. Rallied up today, hit the 200 on the hourly chart. Couldn't quite get above that here. touched it just for a moment and pulled back, similar to the 55 on the S&Ps. Like I've been saying for a while now, the Nasdaq still looks quite a bit stronger than the S&Ps, and you can see that here on the daily chart. We already had a bottom. This is a double bottom here now, rallying off of that level, engulfing the previous candle. Looks pretty clean to the upside in my opinion. We're also above my 358.04 level, which is pretty strong here now. If we rally up a little bit more, that would put us up to 361.58, and you can see I have a trend line at that level. Could be interesting, and then comparing that back to the SPY, you can see we've been on that rally, currently in a downtrend short term, but nowhere near that 200 on the daily chart. Got the 21 and VWAP sitting at 365.17. Right in that same range. I do have a level there at 364.84. Everything looks pretty clean into that level in my opinion. Moving over to the Russell and the Dow, you can see very similar thesis. They've been falling off a cliff. And then here today, we hit that level at 170.35. We touched it yesterday, but we overthrew it quite a bit today. Hit these lower levels on these wicks. Found a little bit of support there, some solid volume, still bearish momentum. RSI perking up just a little bit. This could be a bottoming tail at critical support here on the Russell. Similarly on the Dow, hit that level once again at 329.40. We'd been talking about that level for a while. Found some more support there, just like we found yesterday. Momentum ticking towards bullish. Lots of volume at that level. It does seem like we found at least a little bit of a short-term bottom here in both of these charts. Moving over to Apple and Tesla. Apple had the doji yesterday. Had a candle, basically the exact same candle as Monday, right at that level. You can see they're just about identical. Got a little bit of resistance at 175, but we're continuing to hold this 170.90 level. You can see we gapped down to there and then rallied up. Next level for me is one. You also have VWAP sitting at that level. Pretty interesting. You also have a highly traded zone sitting at 177.90. Overall, this still looks like a little bit of a base, and it could rally out of this zone. Momentum ticking towards bullish here. RSI looking a little bit more bullish coming off of the SMA. And then you got Tesla going straight to the moon at 5.9% on the day. Broke through my level at 255.44. Ended up rallying almost to the next one at 264.68. It is down a little bit after hours, but this is super bullish. Big breakout. Looks clean to the upside. We're above all the EMAs and SMAs, and I would expect this to continue higher in my opinion. Moving over to AMD and Google. Both of these had a super bullish day. AMD up almost 4%. Google 2.23%. AMD breaking that 102.27 level up to 104. Got a couple of EMAs and SMAs of resistance here, but bullish momentum, bullish RSI. This does look pretty clean. Next level for me sitting up at 109. And then 114 above that, coming off of the 200. This looks pretty bullish in my opinion. Google, similar thesis. It had been chopping up a little bit, but big breakout here today. Got above all the EMAs and SMAs. Clear break through that 133.86 level. Held way above it. Next one for me up at 138.21. Right at these previous highs, and everything looks clean here to the upside on Google in my opinion. Moving over to staples and discretionaries. Staples showing some signs of life. We haven't seen anything like this in a while, going all the way back to the 19th of September, where we had a little bit of a perk up and then a big continuation lower. We have another kind of a perk up. Doesn't mean that we're going to break through immediately here. Probably going to double bottom or slightly higher low, but strong volume on the day. Does look nice. We didn't get all the way down to my level at 66.27. I would have preferred to move down into that level, hold support, and then rally. Certainly still could happen. This doesn't mean it's going to hold right here, but it is interesting to look at. Discretionary looking much stronger. You can see a low, slightly lower low here, but looking at RSI, you can see lots of divergence, much higher strength on that dip low. And then we rallied here today, looking at 162 for your next level. Clear midpoint at that level already. If it breaks through here, you would expect a pretty strong move up to that 166.78 level, which would be pretty bullish. You also have Tesla driving discretionaries much higher with its massive rally here today. Moving over to energy, you can see both of these have collapsed over the last 4 days. 2% on Friday last week, another 2% on Monday, basically flat for Tuesday, and then down here today, 3.14% on energy, almost 4% on oil and gas. Big bearish candles, big bearish volume. Looks super, super weak on both of these charts here, which is interesting. This could be driving the rest of equities up a little bit. Weakening energy prices typically gives the rest of the markets a little bit of a boost. That could be what we're seeing here, getting pretty close to oversold conditions on the daily chart already just because of how aggressive this move has been. If anybody knows the driver behind this, definitely put that down in the comments. I didn't see anything, but this is a pretty aggressive move in a short period of time, especially when oil and gas prices seem to be going higher. Moving over to breadth, you can see on the 50-day average, we are getting close to that 2.75 area. We talked about it yesterday. We're throwing some wicks into that zone. Zooming in here today, we got a slightly bullish candle, slightly higher RSI read. Doesn't mean anything yet. We've been seeing that here and there on this down move, but it is interesting. 200-day average looks more interesting in my opinion. Big wick to the lows, rallied up, ended up green on the day. Touching these wicks here from March and May of this year. Ended up getting back above 36.23, which is a critical level for me. Does look nice. I think tomorrow you'd want to see a big confirmation on that. At least a green close. If not above this body from the Tuesday candle, that would be really nice as well. Extending out this downtrend line here, going from the February high to the April high. And then you can see here we did wick that level on the 27th of September. Broke through there. You'd want to see it get above that as well. That could be another nice confirmation to the upside. Overall, everything still looks bearish here, but some potential for bullishness over the next day or two. Moving over to yields, 2-year yield sold off, big engulfing candle to the downside. It's been kind of chopping in this zone for a couple of days now. 10-year yield more interesting, looks like a bit of a topping tail. We've seen this before. We got it on Thursday the 28th. Ended up being a slight pullback, but rallied much higher. Could see maybe one more day of pullback and then get another continuation higher. Certainly possible. But look at this move. Absolutely parabolic at this point. It's not going to go on forever, but it is hard to pick the top. And a topping tail is kind of interesting to look at. Moving over to the dollar on the hour and the daily. We had the dollar breaking down here today. Broke trend, broke horizontal support, chopped just below that. Holding that 21 EMA on the hourly chart. Got very close to the 9 EMA on the daily chart. Really, you need to see that break down much further here. Extending this bottom trend line out, that would put us down to around 106. That could be a little bit of an interesting move. Obviously, this is still very bullish, just like yields that we just looked at. But a little bit of a pullback and a break of some support is interesting. Moving over to the volatility indices, big leg down on both of these. We talked about the move index yesterday looking super bullish. We ended up closing much lower. Extending this trend line out here, you can see we're back below it. Did test it pretty aggressively. We didn't quite get to that next level going back to the end of May. Still absolutely could, but this is a pretty big leg down. Interesting. Looking at the VIX, you can see we got a big leg down. We talked about yesterday, it really needed to hold in this area and push to that next one at 2250. Didn't quite do that. Did gap up. Big breakdown. Trend is still bullish, so you have to respect that, but momentum is fading here. RSI looks a little bit weaker. Again, you would want to see a confirmation to the downside, kind of like we talked about on breadth. This is not an engulfing candle, and it doesn't mean we're getting a trend reversal yet, but again, it is interesting. Moving over to my accounts, you can see I did okay, up 665 on the day. Didn't quite recoup all of my losses from yesterday, despite the NASDAQ having a pretty nice rally on the day. Anytime I make more than $100 for every dollar that the NASDAQ goes up is a pretty good day in my opinion. I try to lose a little bit less than $100 for every dollar on the NASDAQ and make a little bit more. So that was a pretty good success here for today. In terms of positions, I did put my shares back on at a pretty good spot, rallied up, made some money. Did end up selling some calls for tomorrow's session at 360. That's a pretty interesting level. Sold that for $2, which was a nice little credit there. So more than 0.5% on those calls. And then I did roll up those 343s that I had up to 357. I also rolled them in time for basically break even. I made money as the markets went higher on those puts. So I was able to roll them up and in time, trying to get that credit a little bit sooner. Realistically, I probably should have taken these off. We might see a little bit of a pullback tomorrow. We'll see how that plays out, but overall, short-term bullish on the NASDAQ with some potential for resistance or slight pullbacks over the next day or two. Let me know down in the comment section what you think of this speakership. I probably won't talk about it tomorrow unless there's anything popping off, but it does seem interesting, and anything that is uncertain seems to affect the markets. So definitely like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video, and make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.